Okay, so just to review, those are just a variety of different realities. Okay, the business side of what's going on in college football, how exclusive of a club this is, like what a big accomplishment it is, to be a college football player. And at the end of the day, like I said, usually going to be about 6 out of 100 players total. If you were to line high school football players up in groups of 100, it's going to be probably no more than 6 of those 100 get to do it at any level. But also important to know, where that's happening and some of those realities. So this next portion of the webinar, really ties into some realities as well. There's going to be a lot of realities shared in this bullet point. But this is better organized just under the idea for you as a player, and even for parents to understand, it's like, what's it take? So these are the options. These are the schools that have football. This is what they, have to offer when it comes to going out and recruiting. But what's it take to actually accomplish it? Like, what needs to be true of me if I'm going to be part of that 6%? And so we break this down into, what I call the 3 F's of fulfilling your dream of college football. And that's film, that's understanding the facts, essentially the truth, and it's also, a full commitment to this thing. Because college football, college athletics in general is not for everyone, including not for everyone academically. And so we'll dig more into that. But first up, I want to talk to you about film, because this is a very distinct thing with football, particularly football recruiting. Some of you have experience in basketball, know that, AAU basketball can be recruited by college coaches, and they have rules around that and different calendars. But bottom line is a high school basketball player can, have a college coach, watch them play and recruit them in some context with AAU basketball. So that's not even school basketball. So outside of school basketball. Same thing can be true with, some context with baseball and summer baseball leagues. And once again, different rules there, but is permissible at times for, college coaches and even pro scouts to, not just assess a player as part of their high school team, but even with some play outside of that. Well, none of that is true for football, right? Football doesn't have some other context outside of the high school, where college football coaches are able to see them play tackle football, right? So I'm not talking about, them being, seeing a kid at a camp, or going to some kind of showcase or combine, where they run or get timed or jump or run routes, catch balls, things like that, maybe in front of a coach. But college football coaches don't rely on those things heavily, because at the end of the day, they at the college level and us at the high school, we are coaching tackle football. And the best way for college football coaches to evaluate a high school football player is on film, right? Studying film and watching film of that player performing as a top performer in tackle football against other competition. And so if you want to play college football, it doesn't get any more fundamental than that. All right, you've got to have varsity film. Okay, so if you want to play college football, your number one goal, your first step in that needs to be that you become a varsity starter. All right, because if you're not a varsity starter, you don't have a chance of accomplishing the second thing you see on the screen there, which is being a top performer. All right, college coaches are looking for the best football players. All right, they're looking for the big guys that can run fast and that can execute the skills at positions that they need to win football games at the college level. So they can keep their job and they can keep coaching players at that school. And so you can't become a top performer against other competition, right, if you're not a top player within your team in the sense of becoming a varsity starter. So this is always my starting point with especially young players. Like, hey, I want to play college football. All right, well, then you need to become a varsity starter. That's mission number one, and doing all the things needed for that to happen. But once that's there even, right, if you want to get recruited to play college football, all right, you must outperform competition on film. right? So you need to play well for your high school football team. You need to have high film grades, right? If that happens, you're likely going to get, recognition as an all-conference or an all-district or an all-state player. And these are all things that a lot of college coaches, if they have a profile of a player that they're looking for by position, some of these things are on that checklist, right? Were they all conference? Did they get any postseason recognition? Were they that level of a player? We want to get winners on our football team. Did they contribute to their high school football team improving and winning more games? Their evaluation, talking to high school coaches, tell me about if you guys grade film or what your assessment is, how did he perform for you guys on a consistent basis? And so that varsity film and being a top performer on that film is an absolute fundamental when it comes to being able to play college football. Those things have to happen. Right? You're not going to become a college football player by being an All-American on your 7-on-7 team, and then you perform poorly when you put pads on and play tackle football. You've got to have varsity film that, because the film doesn't lie, is the classic phrase for us as coaches, and particularly for college coaches. And they have great experience at this. They can watch players and understand from their film, how proficient they are with their speed and the skills that they're looking for, and their strength, their size, etc. And so when it comes to this, some of the basics of understanding this aspect of football film, if you click on this link that's here, I'm going to go ahead and click that one. Just share with you some of these basics, and you could click through these in the presentation as far as in total on your own. But you need to have a Hudl account. Our players, everyone will have a Hudl account. You also need to complete a Hudl profile, and yearly, each year that you have varsity film is having some highlights pinned at the top of that page. And so in order to be able to do that, this link takes you to some instructions about how to complete a Hudl profile, put those things together. The third bullet point you see here is how to create highlight videos. So at CVCA, we do put it on the players to be the ones that, as we go through games and you get film on yourself on the varsity field, is to keep track of some plays and some highlights at your positions. And as you accumulate those highlights within Hudl, you can create an entire highlight video, whether that be halfway through the season, at the end of the season, etc. And we'll talk more about that coming up here as well. There's also a link there for tips, position-specific tips for creating highlights. I'm going to go ahead and click on this one. All right, if you click on that, what that's going to do, it's actually going to take you to a Google Drive folder. And we've borrowed these from an individual I'm going to introduce you to here on the next slide. But as an example, so cornerbacks, if I click on that, gives me some 101 steps to take with, hey, if I'm going to make a highlight video of myself as a corner, and it's kind of like a checklist of the type of football plays that college coaches want to see on a highlight video for a corner. Okay, so if I'm man-on-man and I made the play, because remember, if you're not making plays, you're not going to be able to play college football. But instances where you made, some good plays and man-on-man coverage, any kind of pass breakups, if you had an interception with a run, all right, because they want to see, hey, after you get the ball in your hands, what do you do with it? And see your speed compared to competition. All the way down to all these other things. Hey, if I had some particular blitzes, if I, had some essentially big hits or brought my hips through contact. But that's for corners. And so this is a whole resource here that's by position that gives you, some of those checklist type tips depending on what position you play. And so if I bring us back to this slide here, this is the individual I was mentioning. This is J.R. Sandlin. He is Director of Player Personnel and Recruiting right now at Oklahoma with Oklahoma football. And so every one of those position-specific checklist that we have available for you there in a shared drive was a resource shared by him. He shares these things regularly through social media. He does a great job at Oklahoma. He's been other places, but a mission of his seems to be that he wants to help resource high school athletes and parents and coaches to understand how this works and to give some tools and resources for that. And so he has some general do's and don'ts. If you were to click on the link on this page here where I'm highlighting him, it would take you to some further do's and don'ts. All right, him giving you advice as a Division I FBS football coach that focuses on recruiting, and say, hey, do this, don't do this. All right, things to understand as a high school player who wants to get recruited. But once again, he is the source for those checklists that we have available for you as well. But do encourage you to click the link on his name to further explore that. All right, so next up, so besides film, these 3 F's is the facts. You need to know the measurables of college football. All right, I've had some tremendous football players. Guys that have played for me would be some of the best players I've ever coached. But maybe they didn't have the size and the speed to be able to get scholarship money for that level of football play. And so some of the facts for them, some of the realities that they needed to work with as far as setting goals for college football had to do with, some of those measurables and what level of college football essentially they would be able to play based on the ability to get recruited and what college coaches are looking for at different levels. And so, this is a great resource. Now, this is, resource once again, as we shared some of those thanks and credits at the beginning. But the coach I mentioned to you out of St. Charles North in Illinois, and I believe when I got this resource from some of his materials, he credited somebody else. So, but the bottom line is this is just a kind of a working scale of, position by position standards, if you will, when it comes to size and speed. Okay, and so this is the FBS Division I level. If I were to focus on quarterbacks as an example, it's saying, hey, we want some length, so being 6'2", maybe above that, being able to, run under a 4.7 40, having a sub 4.7 40 speed. And, typically, my experience has been when it comes to, the Division I level, if they're willing to sacrifice on size at a position, it's because there's elite speed. Okay, so I've showed this quarterback slide before to players, and they might say, well, hey, Kyler Murray, what's up? He's not 6'2". But when you look at that sub 4.7 40 category, Kyler Murray has elite speed. From what I understand, he could probably have gone the track and field route and competed at the NCAA level, and who knows, maybe even beyond that in terms of just raw speed. And not to mention, he also was a Major League Baseball prospect. This as far as the type of arm that he had. So there are some anomalies that exist there, but typically that's going to happen because of elite athleticism, right? So if you're 5'9" playing quarterback, right, when it comes to the Division I level, all right, number one, it's probably not going to happen for you, as you'll see with some of these standards that we'll put up here. But even for someone it's not that extreme. Maybe they're 5'11", 6 foot. There needs to be some elite speed. It's not going to be a guy that runs a 4.69 40, and that's barely 6 foot, usually playing Division I football to quarterback position. That athleticism is going to be key. And so just sharing that as an analogy, as a popular example, but these standards are there. So if you're a guy that wants to play, if it's like, hey, my dream is to play Division I FBS football, right, where I'm recruited and I'm given a scholarship, these standards here are things to keep in mind, right? You can't necessarily set a goal with your height, right? Some of this is just going to be facts about your body and how God's wired you. But if you do potentially, have size going for you, there's also a level of athleticism that's typically needed to go with that. And the thing I'll mention with all this before I move on to the next slide is, this is size and speed, guys. Right? I've had plenty of big, fast athletes that have come out for the football team throughout my career. That doesn't mean they were a great football player, though. Right? Once again, coming back to that first F, you've got to have the film. Right? if you have these type of measurables and you're outperforming competition in tackle football on film, all right, you've got a shot. And so once again, these are just standards here. In a lot of ways, I'd say, players for me over the years, using a scale like this more allows them to set some goals. Maybe I need to add some muscle mass to my frame. I have the length, and I need to get faster. Like if I want to fulfill this dream, I'm a great football player, but maybe just a touch slow for these positions. What do I need to do to improve my speed? So encourage you to use these things to set some goals. But if I come down to the Division 1AA or FCS, all right, and if I click back and forth, you'll see some of these numbers changing. Okay, typically you'll see is, hey, maybe we're willing to take a little less length, but a lot of the athleticism markers are still the same. All right, if I click down to Division 2, you kind of notice, maybe the size category doesn't change a ton. Okay, but maybe willing to take on maybe a little bit less elite speed. All right, but still has a standard, right, to be able to play those positions at that level. If I come down to NAIA, once again, some of these are going to be very similar to Division II as far as the type of athlete they're recruiting. And then Division III, as you notice, as I click back and forth with 2 and 3, a lot of positions, there's not a ton of difference here. Once again, if you're going to play college football, you've got to be a really good football player. And, so some of these size differentials, your film, if it's a matter of playing Division II and maybe getting some scholarship money versus playing Division III and you're playing great football but not getting scholarship money for it, might come down to your performance, right? And what your film's like, because some of these standards for size and speed are similar. And then we've also included junior college on there for you as well, which will look a lot like, FCS or Division I in terms of, athletes going to a junior college maybe to still try to fulfill the goal of getting a Division I scholarship. And so they will take on a lot of players according to those similar standards. All right, so that was film and facts. And then the last piece here is just, full commitment. I know my college coach, I know many others, when they come out recruiting, they want to get to know the character of the player. They need to know what kind of student they're getting. They want the full package. And particularly, guys are going to hand out scholarship money. It's not just like a one-sided thing. And so, coaches are really well known for, really trying to assess, like, how much does this kid love the game? Is he going to eat, sleep, and breathe this, because that's what it's going to take to succeed at the college level and not just be present. And academically, is he going to be able to pull this off at our university with his football schedule, the discipline it takes, etc. And so this is that third F that I like to share, is to say, hey, you need to be fully committed to this. This can't just be a dream with no passion. Is you need to be fully committed to it and willing to do the boots on the ground type of things that involves. And so a few of those things I share with guys is to say, you need to fall in love. If you're going to be fully committed to this thing, you need to fall in love with being a student athlete. All right, with being a student athlete. And so within the presentation, if you were to click around these, some of these have links, some don't. But if I just go to this next slide, and you see we got the question at the top, like, hey, do you love being a football player? All right, if you love being a football player, when it comes to being a student at the college level, this is actually a visual of the amount of time spent for the average NCAA athlete when it comes to balancing out academics and athletics. And as you look, you can see, in 168 hours in a week, it's all 7 days. All right, you can see, academics is going to come out on top. Okay, as far as living and breathing time. So you have these other hours in terms of sleep and maybe just other miscellaneous things. But when it comes to your waking hours, you're going to have a high academic load, and you're going to have a almost matching athletic load when it comes to time. All right, that leaves minimal time for socializing and relaxing and things of that nature. And so the bottom line is, if you're going to maintain a schedule like this, you better love it. All right, and this is a great thing to take a look at to help you assess even now. Like, hey, do I look at this and say, man, yeah, I want to do that. I can take that on. I want that challenge. You better have that type of motivation if you're going to be a college football player. And what I mean by that is not just get recruited and get there and show up there, is to stay there, right? To actually compete, all right, and be able to be a player that maybe even gets on the field. And so this is just a nice visual I've always found to help you assess, like, do you love doing this? Another version of this is taking a look at, kind of a daily schedule. And the challenge we put on this is, hey, if you cannot maintain this schedule, and I would say, with joy, meaning like that you want to do this, right? That you want to maintain this schedule. Like, this actually sounds like a challenge that you could take on, that you're willing to take on. If you can't maintain this schedule, you cannot play college football, because this is what your life will be like. And for those of us that have that experience and played college football and had a whole career, meaning played for 4 or 5 years, whatever it was, there hits a point where you fall in love with this process. And it doesn't mean everything's perfect and that you don't got to work through all this, because each one of us that played college football would tell you we had to. There was many times of perseverance to say, hey, I'm going to keep doing this with joy and intensity, because I'm trusting that this is going to work out. This is for my best. It's for the team's best, whatever it is. And maybe have some humps that you had to get over at times, but in general, looking back, it's like, yeah, this is why I coach still, right? This isn't too different than some in-season aspects of a high school schedule of waking up, going to school, right, doing classes, practicing, watching film, being disciplined with your study time at night, getting good sleep, etc. And so once again, just a visual to help you assess how much you really want this to be a goal. All right, and then if you look at these things and it's like, this seems like almost like a death sentence to you, for lack of better terms, you should evaluate, like, is this a goal that I should be pursuing? Because you really do need to love it.